Angela, hi. Thank you ever so much for agreeing to talk to me today. We're running a programme of work in NHS Research and Development Northwest that's focused on helping clinical leaders in developing cultures of research and innovation in their teams. And one of the things that people are very interested about is how to develop a research strategy. So I wondered if you could start off by just telling me a little bit about yourself and your current role, and then we'll go on to talk a bit more about research strategy development.
Okay. My current role is quite a long title, but the full title is a Florence Nightingale Foundation Chair of Clinical Nursing Practice Research.
Okay.
And that post is a tripartite arrangement between Central Manchester University's Trust, the School of Nursing, Midwifery and Social Work at the University of Manchester, and the Florence Nightingale Foundation, which is a national organisation. And they are looking to support a network of nursing professors across the country, and they're currently 6.
Okay.
And the foundation wants to have what equates to a virtual faculty across the country of nurses who do research in clinical practice and can provide a leadership role and an ambassadorial role around nursing research.
Oh, fantastic. So that's joining you all up at a national level.
Yeah. So there's also an aspiration that we can collaborate on research as well, where there are synergies and similar areas of interest. And obviously each post is aligned with a major trust in the UK, so that offers the potential advantage of different sites for research that we can collaborate on.
Oh, that's great. And could you tell me a little bit about your relationship between the university and the trust and how that works?
Yeah, each post has to have a memorandum of understanding before it can go forward for funding. So the foundation is quite keen right from the beginning that the partnership that sits behind the role is a genuine one. So there is a real interest that the research activity and the academic expertise that sits within the university is aligned with the aspirations of the trust around research in nursing and allied health. So there is support at a senior level, basically, in both the trust and the university, and a commitment to make the role happen, and also support me in achieving the research capacity building and the research activity elements of the job.
Okay, so on a day-to-day basis, what does that look like? Do you spend time in the trust and in the university, or how does that?
So I spend probably I would say that the week is probably split into thirds. I'd spend about a third of the week in the trust, a third of the week in the university, and a third of the week either out doing project work or presenting at conferences or going to project meetings or national committees or whatever. So I'd say a third of the week is outside of Manchester, and then the time I'm in Manchester it's split between the two. And the role in the trust sits in the research and innovation division.
Okay.
So it's housed very much within the sort of research engine, if you like, in the trust. So that's quite good. But I have a managerial lead through nursing, and I report to Sue Ward, who is the deputy director of one of the 2 deputy directors of nursing in the trust.
Okay, so you actually report quite high up into the trust organisation.
And we have regular meetings with the director of research and innovation and the deputy director of nursing and myself, and the research manager for the trust. So we it's kind of like a small strategic group, if you like.
So we were just talking about linking strategically within the trust. Yeah. And I just wondered, Andrew, if you could tell me a little bit about, what are the aspirations of having a post like yours working into the trust? What's the trust hoping to achieve?
I think the trust has a number of different goals. It prides itself on being a very research active trust, and it definitely feels like that. And it's a partner, obviously, with the Manchester Academic Health Science Centre. So what goes with that is aspirations around research activity. So certainly with portfolio research, big funders and prestigious research. But I think there's also, particularly with the nursing and allied health senior management team, an awareness that that sort of top-end research doesn't happen by accident, and you have to grow that expertise. And so they're very committed to the idea of clinical academic careers and supporting people in the early years of their career to become more research aware and to use research in practice more, but also for those individuals who really want to have a clinical academic career to support those going through. So a big part of the aspiration of the research is around research capacity building, in line with the clinical academic career pathway, but also more than that, I think. And there is also something about thinking about the trust priorities around improving the patient experience, and knowing that nurses and allied health professionals can do a lot in terms of the research questions they generate and the research activity that they can do that will support the trust in achieving that goal.
Yeah, and one of the things that's going through my mind as we're talking, most trusts have a research strategy at trust level.
Yeah.
Why do you think it's important to have a separate strategy for nurses, midwives and AHPs? Why do we need that?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things that spring to mind. And there's a whole literature on the debating the differences between the professions. But I think for nurses, midwives and allied health professionals, their training is very different to medicine. I think it's fair to say there have been lots of changes in recent years, and most people at the point of being a registered health professional would be research aware, but I don't think they'd necessarily be research confident. And so I think it's making sure that at the point of qualifying, acknowledging that a lot needs to be done in pre-registration training, but the point of qualifying when people are going from nurse training, newly qualified allied health professionals, into practice, there does need to be something that ensures there's the infrastructure and the strategic direction to support them in sort of research goals. And I guess as well that the way medical careers evolve from being a newly qualified doctor, research is much more explicitly built into the training, I think, whereas it isn't so much in nursing, midwifery and allied health in the same way. So for me, it's about ensuring the systems and the structures are in place to make sure that research can happen, that it's aligned with organisational and divisional priorities and clinical priorities, and that those people who do want to develop a clinical academic career are given the support to do that.
And do you think that alignment is quite important? Because I know we've been talking to some people who've been thinking about developing a strategy. And there seems to be something important about making sure that what you're developing aligns with the overall strategy.
It can't sit as a satellite strategy and not be aligned. So there will be, in most trusts, I'm sure, a research strategy. Anything that happens which is explicitly about nursing, midwifery, allied health has to sit comfortably alongside or within that. Otherwise it just won't work. And that they also have to acknowledge the clinical priorities of the trust that those strategies are operating in.
And is that why you being located within research and innovation is actually that link is really important?
I think it is really important. But I think it's important to have that support within the research and innovation division, but it's also really important to have the support of the senior nursing management team. So because any activity which goes on that is endorsed at that level
Yeah.
has purchase
Yeah.
then in the clinical areas.
Okay.
Because it's not just me that says something's important, it's the senior nursing management.
Yeah,
So.
and I guess that's really key to making it happen rather than being a strategy that sits on a shelf and nobody actually.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd be really interested to know a little bit about how you develop a strategy, the different state. Just your views on how you'd go about it if you didn't have one.
Yes, I think it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I'm not sure whether there's a precise science.
Yeah, I'm sure there isn't.
But anyway, I'll tell you what I did.
Yeah.
So I think the first thing to do is to scope out whose opinion it is important to get first before you do anything. Look at what current strategies are in place, and talk to the key people in the organisation. Yeah. And I think then it's important to take a step back and have a good honest think about what the aspiration is of the organisation key people and what any previous or linked strategies are trying to achieve.
Okay.
And then it's helpful to look at the evidence base and look at what else is out there, and look at what other strategies are out there. And then I think develop your aims and objectives for the strategy, and the shape of the strategy. And for me, I was quite keen that whatever we developed wasn't a big weighted document that sat on a shelf, but that was very accessible to people, so that it had grab visually and conceptually, and that people could see it as a useful tool. Yeah. Whether that's at a managerial level, where people can see actually it makes sense to engage with this, because this might be not just staff wanting to be released from clinical time, this might actually give me some useful information by releasing people to do research activity. And it also helps those people who do want to become more research active, and I think if a strategy can provide people with the right direction of travel, that's really helpful, rather than actually just being another lot of things to do but you're not quite sure where it's taking you. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and on top of everything else I'm doing.
Yeah. Having then written sort of scoped out what you want in a strategy, it's then really important to consult on it, and all the stuff about engaging people and making sure people have ownership in a strategy is really important as well.
Can I just take you back? If you mentioned a little bit about using the evidence base, and I just wondered, are there particular evidence base or models that you draw on?
I mean, the one which we have talked about before, Lynn, is the model that the framework that I've chosen and that we've talked about within the trust is the Cook framework around research capacity building, which has primarily been used in community settings and in primary care settings, but has the benefit of being very accessible in terms of it has a visual framework that people can connect to, and then when you dismantle that visual framework, it's a very easy to understand practical tool. So the first draft of the strategy that I'm currently developing with colleagues at the Trust is based on the Cook framework.
Okay.
So Joe Cook has developed a framework which is based on 6 principles, and we've used those principles to develop our strategic objectives.
Okay.
And for each of those objectives, we're building the evidence of Joe Cook's implementation of this framework to inform what needs to be done at a divisional level within the Trust in order to achieve those objectives. That they're not must-dos, but they're can-dos. Yep. So depending on what is required within each individual division will dictate, sort of which of those things that we've suggested are the most appropriate to work on as priorities.
So when you've developed those objectives, will that enable you to benchmark where the Trust is at the moment?
Yes, and we do have historically some benchmarking
Okay.
around research activity, so particularly around the clinical academic careers. So we do have some intelligence about nurses and allied midwives and allied health who have accessed different educational opportunities, so like the masters, the internships, the masters, the PhD opportunities that are funded by the NIHR, and other research training opportunities. We also know we haven't got complete data, but we're getting better at that in terms of dissemination of research and research grants and things like that. So we've got some activity data that is historic data that we can look at how that improves over time.
Who's collecting that, Angela? Where does that data, how does that data, is it in research, do you know?
The Research and Innovation Division has divisional research support managers.
Okay.
They collect some of that data, and my predecessor and the research fellow that worked with her have also collected some of that data.
Because sometimes that data is quite hard to come by, you know, that a lot of people maybe understand fellowships and things, who's got those awards, but actually developing all the data about the other research activities, sometimes it just gets completely lost.
And I don't think that we've got complete data at all, but I think it's a start. And that is a challenge in very large trusts, which there are many now. It's really difficult, I think, and it's a continual. You need to be continually vigilant, I think, in order to join up the dots. And this morning we had a meeting supporting people writing for publication.
Okay.
And there were several people there who'd completed master's degrees, either on a particular specialty, a master's degree, or in an IHR funded research master's. They will differ completely as individuals. The extent to which they've reported back to their clinical area, their research activity, either in terms of the relevance of their research work to their clinical area. So did their dissertation generate any evidence which might be useful to practice, but also just in terms of what happens next. So they vary in terms of whether they would think to tell their head of nursing that they have written an article for publication. So, sometimes people just don't join the dots together, and it's lack of awareness, really. So it's making sure those systems are in place to make sure we can
There's something in there, isn't there, about how we develop our researchers and how we help them become aware of the need to do that kind of thing. That very often people underestimate the kind of the power of what they're creating. It's just a publication, or it's just a conference presentation, but don't always think to tell people that they've done that.
And I think there's and this isn't unique to nursing, it's health professionals. Everybody's got very demanding clinical jobs. They're doing a project which they care about often because it relates to their clinical practice, but having got through the masters and finished the project, having given a lot of their own time to doing it, they're shattered often. So there's a well-deserved break. Then when they come up for air, I think that's when you lose the connection sometimes between, actually feeding back the findings, letting your organisation know what's happened next. Have you disseminated it?
So I guess in terms of actually developing the strategy, that whole process is actually going to be quite important, isn't it, in terms of, it's great to develop the strategy, but then there's that whole thing about if it's 3 years or 5 years, how do you track progress? So I guess, how do you have to set up the systems within the strategy to do that?
I think if we can try as much as possible to use existing systems, so tinker with existing systems rather than, and I think certainly at Central Manchester, it's a divisional structure. The systems for reporting both ways are there. We just need to make sure that research is included in that reporting. I think that's the thing. and to make sure that research is a valued component of that reporting. So, you know, there's a professional forum where all the senior nursing management team meet every month. That is a business meeting, and research is part of that. So we can use that as a tool.
So it's on the agenda at that meeting?
Yeah. So we can use that as a tool or a mechanism to prompt the reporting, you know, regular reporting of research activity.
And do you have any ideas how you're going to engage? We've talked a little bit about, you know, the importance of influencing upwards, and how are you going to engage staff? Because big trust.
It is a big trust.
How do you engage?
I think you've got to, I keep thinking about a basket of goods that need to be available. There's no one thing that's going to work, and I think there has to be a number of things that are available to people, and a communication system is one thing. So making sure that new opportunities that are available are targeted to the right people. And again, the divisional structure does help, but also there's myself and Tim who have knowledge about people who've put themselves forward as research interested and keen to develop their knowledge, so we can target information accordingly and use other communication strands throughout the trust.
And you've been very successful, or the trust's been very successful in terms of its NIHR, you know, obtaining things like PhD studentships, the internships recently. The trust's been quite successful, and I guess maybe that's part of having that system in place to support people, identify people. I think communication definitely, and I think as well it's that continually growing that awareness of the value of research. So it isn't another thing to do, but that is a sort of an extra job, but it's actually part of what you do clinically as much as possible within a clinical area, so that if people are being released for research opportunities and research development opportunities, for them to do that in a topic which has direct clinical relevance or organisational relevance, so that I think there's a real interest, there's support from the top, but there's a real interest in supporting research activity which can help inform practice, and I think that's quite important. So I guess it's that thing about research being close to practice,
that
it's
absolutely
just central to it,
which is one of the principal stroke objectives in the Cook framework. So I think another big thing is opportunities for people to grow in confidence. And so for me that's really important, and it's growing in confidence at every stage. So for the newly qualified nurse or somebody who is clinically focused, but just interested in just started to get interested in research, things like the internships are so valuable in getting some research experience, finding out whether it is something that I really want to commit to, and finding out the nuts and bolts of what research involves, and that's really important as an opportunity, but also for confidence building, I think. Offering training for writing for publication, it's confidence, not knowledge, that stops people doing it, I think. So the other thing is when people come out of research training opportunities that are based within universities, so like the Masters in Research, a PhD, the problem is often where they come out of those and go back into clinical practice and try with that new knowledge to broker a mixed role in some way, so to keep the research as part of their role once they go back to clinical practice. And I think that's a challenge, and it's a challenge partly because it's very easy to get subsumed by your clinical role, but it's also a challenge because you're lacking in confidence sometimes with your new skills and your new knowledge, and so it's having the support, I think, at that time to allow you to grow in confidence and consolidate your skills.
So that's one of the key things, that having your kind of post enables you to deliver that, you know, to support that kind of.
So it's supporting people when they're developing new research questions, when they're thinking about accessing funding opportunities so that they can pitch things that are within their ability, and they can pitch things that are fundable ideas and doable and of relevance and are feasible within the constraints of having a mixed role, you know, sort of working in predominantly a clinical role.
Because we were talking about that the other day, you know, that we've got a growing community of clinicians coming out with their PhDs.
Yes.
But in research terms, they're still very, very early in their research career, and sometimes there are quite high aspirations placed on them from their clinical setting about, well, you've got your PhD now, but actually they still need quite a lot of support to develop a funding proposal or to be even in a position to apply. So I guess having someone who can make the connections and help them and support them and is quite important.
I think it's really important, and I think the other thing, if we talk about the postdoctoral experience, is that very often these people are very driven individuals. They've achieved a lot clinically, and their achievements, the things they've achieved clinically, they try and match with their research aspirations. And so sometimes it's very easy to set goals that aren't possible to achieve, and then you lose motivation because you've not got there. And so I think it's important to support people in managing their expectations when they're newly postdoctoral. So have those aspirations, but set realistic timelines to them, and take time to stand back and think about what you need in place in order for you to realise them, because you need collaborations, you need partnerships and people with a shared interest. You can't do it on your own. And I think sometimes nurses and midwives who've gone through clinical academic career training, that's part of the thing that they haven't learnt to do. So you'll have got your research training, you'll be experienced clinically, but you won't have learnt about setting up those collaborations, and that is so necessary in pitching yourself for those funding opportunities that are the next level up.
And in a way, because it's a new community for nurses, midwives and AHPs, I mean, it's quite new, and it's fantastic news that we've now got that growing community.
Absolutely.
But it's still a new group of people, isn't it, that we're needing to get our heads around. How do you support them in a clinical setting rather than them leaving practice and going into university?
Absolutely, and I think there are some really challenging realities out there at the moment, financial constraints that trusts are under and the clinical constraints that they're under. But I think if we could allow our researchers to grow within a clinical environment and give them a responsibility to generate evidence that helps trust to meet their agenda, then that would be fantastic. So to have more innovative, creative joint posts would be great.
So the strategy that you're working on at the moment, you're just in the stages of developing it?
Yes.
And then it will go out to consultation?
Yes, it will go out to consultation. So again, using the existing structures within the trust. Like the divisional structures, to make sure people will have an opportunity to comment on it. There is a need to be fairly pragmatic, though, because I think you have to consult, but the consultation can't go on forever. But I think there has to be a point at which you just get the strategy in place and start to implement it. So, and again, at the Trust there is an annual nursing conference in September. They generally have a nursing strategy at the Trust, so that strategy is refreshed every year. And the intention will be that we will launch the new nursing and allied health research strategy alongside that refreshed nursing strategy at the conference in September.
How big is the core group who's working on the development of the strategy? Is it just yourself, or have you got a
We've
group
got
of people?
So it's just a small group, but then I think it's about layers of consultation out from there. So an immediate group to go next would be the professional forum. To get feedback. But they're aware of what we're doing and the direction of travel and what we're thinking, and supportive of that. So.
Yeah. Angela, thank you ever so much for sharing all your skills and expertise and knowledge with us. It's been really, really helpful, and I'm sure will be very helpful for other managers who are thinking about developing and going down this route. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Lynn.